Hi, this is Hank Aaron. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Roberts with a reminder that Rhonda Shear will join us in our second hour. Plus, we'll play part 2 of a conversation that began last week with Mariette Hartley. We hope you stay tuned for both those segments. In the meantime, Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen are with us for another edition of This Week in TV History. 20th segment, of course, is brought to us by our friends at Story Salon, Southern California's longest-running, regularly performing live storytelling ensemble with live shows every Wednesday night in Valley Village. For more information, go to storysalon.com or facebook.com/storysalon. This particular segment with Tony and Donna originally aired in October 2015. Tony?
September 20th, 1955. The Phil Silvers Show, titled You'll Never Get Rich. Which I'm surprised they got away with that in 1955. Maybe people just didn't know that that's a lyric to a song.
Well, I forget the Army song, but that is one of the lyrics.
I think it was one of the MGM. I think it was Barney Bear when he gets drafted. The eye chart.
Yeah.
In large letters. You're in the Army now.
Yes, that's
Next line, slightly smaller. You're not behind the plow. Next line, slightly smaller. You'll never get rich. Next line, completely unlegible. So tiny you can't read it, and then giant letters at the bottom, you're in the Army now.
Yeah, so
you have the music. The music has always been...
And again, it's 10 years post-World War II, which is a very patriotic period. So, I think they pretty much figured the audience would get it.
Yeah, the line was either you're digging a ditch or you never get rich.
Yeah. But you're right, I don't think...
People...
A millennial audience would not get that line.
Oh, no. That was something, that definitely of a World War II era.
Yeah.
And this is a show I don't think I've ever seen.
They do show it on MeTV Sunday mornings. I think they kind of put it in with Gomer Pyle.
It's on it's like overnight. Saturday,
yeah.
It's like 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, or at least 2 o'clock in the morning out here. But it was on. I remember KTVU in San Francisco in the 70s. They ran it from 11 to 12 because they would have a 10 o'clock news, and then. While the ABC, NBC, and ABC affiliates had their 11 o'clock news, they would have counter-programming, and they would show stuff like Bilko from 11 to 12. And so that's when I first was aware of it. And then, of course, in the 70s, Phil Silvers was still doing a lot of guest roles on daytime show and nighttime shows. So, going back to what we talked about with F Troop, it was sort of farcical, he was sort of he was a career Army man, but he was sort of a semi-good con man, always trying to make the Army work for him, and always trying to make sure he had a peacetime assignment. Because look, what was the name of the camp? It was Camp or Fort.
They had moved at one point. I think they moved to California eventually. To justify guest stars.
But it's like it was a peacetime assignment. I mean, basically he was doing boot camp or whatever he was doing with the recruits who were serving out their hitch. But a lot of the first couple of seasons of MASH have a lot of Bilko in them, where Hawkeye and Trapper are running cons.
That's right, yeah.
To deal with the monotony of nothing happened. You're waiting for something to happen. So you run card games, or you do contests, or you do this, or you order spare ribs from a place in Chicago, 4,000 miles away. Well, Bilko did stuff like that all the time.
You had a character, Dwayne Doberman, was
Maurice
Gosfield.
That's right. Who sort of became the Fonzie of that show, and that he was he was the breakout supporting character, and the audience responded to him, and so they wrote more and more for him until Maurice Gosfield sort of got, as I understand, he let the success go to his head, and he was sort of de-emphasized after that. Because it was after all called the Phil Silvers Show.
Yeah, I mean, just first of all, you have the name, you had that look. It was very His kind of bark was very, very funny also, and he used that in other characters. Now you mentioned Alan Alda with MASH. He was one of the guest stars. Now the guest stars: Dick Van Dyke, Eric Fleming,
Van Dyke,
Greg Gwynn.
One of his first TV appearances.
Paul Reed, Paul Lynn.
George-
Paul Lynn did everything.
George Kennedy was, and I don't remember whether they were out here or still in New York at the time, but George Kennedy was, at the time, George Kennedy was a career Army officer, and he was a technical advisor for a number of television shows, and one of the shows he was technical advisor on was the Phil Silvers Show. And as part of his arrangement of advising on the accuracy of Army life and Army regulations, and can we do this, or can we portray it this way, he eventually got interested in being in front of the camera. And among his first acting appearances was on the Phil Silvers Show. And by the time Bilko, because it was known by several titles. Sometimes it was known as Sergeant Bilko. Sometimes it was known as the Phil Silvers Show. Sometimes it was known as You'll Never Get Rich.
Yeah.
But by the time the show ended, George Kennedy resigned from the Army and pursued a full-time acting career.
And I just assumed George Kennedy was a career actor.
Well, he became one.
He became one, yes.
So to answer your question, they were originally set in Fort Baxter.
That's it.
Fort Baxter. Yeah, I could not remember these. And then reassigned to Camp Fremont in California. The mass transfer was explained in the storyline orchestrated by Bilko, who discovered a map of a gold deposit in an abandoned army post. So that's why they got reassigned. Now, the other reason going from Kansas to California was to have some of the Hollywood guest stars justified, like Lucy and Ricky coming to California. So that way they could have Dean Martin, Mickey Rooney, Deanna Dors, and Lucille Ball play themselves in later episodes. And they had a finale.
Bilko had a finale?
Bilko had a finale. It was called Weekend Colonel, and they discover it's one of those doppelganger. There were several doppelganger episodes. There was one where Bilko had one. I think Doberman had one that was a colonel or general. There were several doppelgangers. Were always fun tools, but there was a short order cook who looked like their colonel, and they got him to impersonate. They get busted. They actually do get caught, and they are locked away in the guardhouse. So they're in the stockade, the guardhouse. And the colonel is looking at all of them on a closed-circuit TV monitor. So they are all caught. They are all busted. They're in the guardhouse. The colonel is watching them on the TV monitor.
Paul Ford played the colonel, didn't he?
I believe you are right.
Yeah.
And, it was closed-circuit TV, and the colonel is just looking at it going, it's a wonderful show, and as long as I'm the sponsor, it will never be canceled. And then the camera cuts, the closed-circuit TV cuts to Bilko and his henchmen finally behind bars, and Bilko waves to the camera and says, "That's all, folks." And that's how the series ended. So they were able to break the fourth wall in the guise of a closed-circuit camera setup.
And, of course, Phil Silvers, prior to Bilko, was a big Broadway star. He did Top Banana with Rose Marie, which is a big hit in the 50s. And and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, with television, he got pigeonholed into that Bilko type of character. And so whenever he would do the Lucy show, he played a variation of that
Bilko.
In the early 60s, after a few years after Bilko ended. CBS gave him the new Phil Silvers show, which was basically the old Phil Silvers show, except he was a civilian, but he was still playing that sort of semi-wheeler-dealer con man. And to let you know that he was playing a semi-con man, he played a man named Harry Grafton.
Oh, a little on the nose there.
Yeah.
Let's also point out that Phil Silvers, I think one of the last things he did was a Happy Days. His daughter, Kathy Silvers, played Jenny Piccolo.
Yeah.
Kathy also had a little cameo in the Sergeant Bilko movie with Steve Martin. And when he did his cameo on Happy Days, it was pretty much Bilko. He was a very charming character. He was in the tag, because Joni and Jenny broke the statue of General Pfister in the center of town, and they got busted. And Jenny did not want to tell her dad that she had done this thing, and Joni took all the blame because her dad was very frail. And of course, the Cunninghams meet her dad, and it's Phil Silver, and you could tell that he comes on. He probably looked at the script, got the gist. It looks like he's making up lines and throwing everybody off, because he is talking, and he's old, he's hoarse, but he is talking a mile a minute, and it's mostly between him and Marion Ross and Tom Bosley, and he's like he goes up, he greets Mary, and he says, "Oh, Joni, Joni, you're such a lovely girl. I'm finally so glad to meet you." And then she goes, "Oh, no, I'm Marion," and she's blushing. And then he goes over to Howard, pulls him aside. "So what'd you do, rob the cradle?" And then go back and then try to address the problem with the kids. And then he said, "Fine, we'll all go out to dinner. It's on me. Come on." And he goes, "No, I said we're going out to..." And he starts the barking of Bilko. And they do play kind of the drum beat, which was the theme song when he is in the opening credits of Bilko. So it was a nice send-up. It was a nice, he was, I'm sure, semi-retired, but they got him to do this cameo because he was the much older father of Kathy Silvers. Also, everybody involved with the show went on to do other stuff. I mean, you had Alan Melvin, who,
Sam the Butcher.
He was Gomer Pyle. He seemed to be a different criminal in every season of the Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. But Nat Hiken later would do Car 54, Where Are You? And you look at that show, and Joey Ross also was on, did both.
The only one who didn't do anything was Maurice Gusfield.
Yeah, I think he was talking about stereotype. If there was a schlub stereotype, he was it. But they all went, and then, a lot of people who, I think some went to McHale's Navy, some were doing Car 54, Where Are You? But then you get all of these people, they were all eventually doing MASH, different writers and different people involved, so they all... They were doing Hogan.
Didn't Larry Gelbart write for Bilko, or...?
I think he did. Yeah. I think they were all doing
there was a thread between Bilko
but you
and
definitely see Car 54 as a direct descendant.
Yes.
I think Car 54, I've looked at many episodes, and we've talked to Hank Garrett. He speaks very highly of Carl Ballantine, who was at McHale's Navy, but Nat Hiken. I think there was much more of a reverence to the New York Police Department that you had than, let's say, Bilko had for the Army. I think there was a different mindset. I think we would watch, and I've debated this with veterans. And my dad's an officer. We've discussed this. My dad wasn't always thrilled how officers are depicted in the comedies, because usually, and even when you're dealing with the USO, often the officers are the butt of the jokes. The sergeants are smarter than the colonels, things like that. I think McHale and Hogan were the exceptions. But you would often see, the enlisted people. They were always the smarter ones in the room. But you would see, I would say that there was a reverence with Car 54 because you were still showing a certain amount of respect for the police department of New York. You didn't have necessarily that same respect for the Army, but I think the viewers were veterans, most of them veterans of World War II, and they liked to see the brass getting the pie. I don't think you wanted to show that with the police at that time. You could have your joke, but at the same time, at the end of the day, you still wanted to have a certain amount of respect for the men and women in blue. But all of these shows, it's amazing that all these guys went on to do so many other stuff, and each time, going all the way up to MASH.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back. One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries.
Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay Area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Ed Robertson thanking you for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next episode. You can enjoy Tony Figueroa's standalone podcast this week in TV history, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find audio. We will welcome back Rhonda Shear when we come back. Rhonda is bringing back Up All Night as a series of monthly specials beginning October 25th. Then we'll play part 2 of a conversation that began last week with Emmy Award-winning actress Mariette Hartley. All that and more when we come back for hour number 2 of TV Confidential. Please stay with us.